The critical level of desertion in the 74th Brigade of Russia in the Pokrovsk direction is creating serious problems for the command. Lack of medical care for the wounded and concealment of real losses are leading to mass desertion in the Russian armed forces. The lack of evacuation of the wounded from the battlefield and the failure to provide them with medical care became key factors in desertion, Atesh partisan movement says. Our agents from the 74th Separate Motorized Rifle Brigade of the Russian Armed Forces, which is suffering huge losses in the Pokrovsk direction, are reporting a critical wave of desertions. The command, given the goal of capturing Pokrovsk as quickly as possible, continuously throws personnel into suicidal assaults, not giving the soldiers any rest. The key factor in desertion is the complete failure to evacuate the wounded from the battlefield and provide them with medical care. Fallen occupiers are cynically listed as missing in action to conceal the real losses. Atesh says. Atesh appeals to the soldiers of the Russian occupation forces in the Pokrovsky sector. Your command is abandoning you to your death, leaving the wounded to rot on the battlefield. Desertion is the only way to survive. Recall desertion from the Russian army is becoming increasingly widespread. A year and a half ago, Russia had opened around 80,000 cases against deserters. As of now, military garrison courts have issued at least 18,000 convictions, and the actual number of soldiers who have fled may be several times higher. As The Insider previously reported, escaping from the front is possible for those who are truly determined to do so, as confirmed by the deserters themselves. Alarmed by this reality, the Russian authorities have built an entire system that works to return soldiers to the front lines in Ukraine. Although it is effective in many cases, it does not work perfectly. According to important stories, nearly 50,000 soldiers were wanted a year ago, and that number has clearly risen substantially since then. Data from the Get Lost project show that the share of people deciding to flee is growing each year. In 2023, deserters accounted for 8.8% of all requests the project received. In 2024, it was 19%, and by June 2025, it had risen to 22%. Between October 2022 and October 2025, the project helped 1,001 deserters leave the country, while another 1,501 remain in hiding within Russia. Desertion carries a prison sentence of up to 15 years under Article 338 of the Russian Criminal Code, but army commanders often prefer not to send runaways to court. Instead, they try by any means necessary to fill the gaps in their ranks and return soldiers to duty using threats, beatings, and emotional blackmail. Recall, fierce fighting continues to engulf the eastern city of Pokrovsk as Russian forces press a prolonged campaign to seize this industrial hub in Ukraine's Donetsk region. Once home to some 60,000 people, Pokrovsk has weathered more than a year and a half of relentless bombardment. Now the battle for the city has entered a critical phase. Western military analysts say Russian troops have steadily edged into Pokrovsk's southern outskirts, wearing down Ukrainian defenses and using worsening late autumn weather to move men and equipment closer to the front. The fight, they note, has settled into a grinding contest of attrition that has stretched Ukrainian units thin.
France is preparing to commemorate on Thursday the 10-year anniversary of the November 13, 2015 Paris terror attacks by Islamic State extremists that killed 132 people and injured more than 400. According to Associated Press, on that fateful day, a cell of 9 IS supporters armed with automatic rifles and explosive vests struck across French capital. French President Emmanuel Macron will attend a special ceremony to pay tribute to all the victims of the attacks that targeted the Bataclan concert venue, terraces of bars and restaurants, and France's national stadium. Survivors and families will also attend the commemoration that will take place in a new garden in memory of the victims of the attacks. Arthur DeNovos was at the concert of the Californian rock band Eagles of Death Metal at the Bataclan on the night of the attacks. At 9:47 p.m., 3 gunmen burst into the Bataclan, firing indiscriminately. 90 people died. DeNovos managed to escape when he heard the first gunshots, crawling towards the nearest emergency exit door. I remember crawling on top of bodies. I believe most of the people were pretending to be dead were not dead, but still. And I remember a few faces or at least a few facial expressions of people who were necessarily dead because of the angle of the neck, because of color of the skin, he told the Associated Press. President of the Victims Association Life for Paris, DeNovos has made a point of telling his story for the past 10 years, talking to media, writing books, so what happened on that night in Paris is not forgotten. But, as the anniversary date looms, it revives distressing memories. The 10th anniversary is here, and emotions and tension is everywhere for us survivors. That kind of shields us from the world in a way, because we're so focused on the grief and on remembering those who lost their lives, that we live in that kind of small bubble, he explained.
You know, the 10th anniversary is here, and emotions and tension is everywhere for us survivors. That, you know, that kind of shields us from the world in a way, because we're so focused on the grief and on remembering those who lost their lives, that we live in that kind of small bubble when, you know, starting November 1st, we start to interact with each other so much, but it kind of blurs everything else. I would say the hardest part is November the 14th, when, you know, you have to get back to normal life somehow. And the grief is still here, but the bond is a little more distant.